Hello everybody, I want to do some drawing practices in my sketchbook today. I'm going to use watercolor, so let's start and have fun. So at the beginning of this year, I made a little art resolution for myself to just draw more of some things that I don't normally do, and those things were drawing more poses / like anatomy, full body drawings. That's all one thing. And I wanted to draw more backgrounds because I never do that, or I just do like a pattern background or stars. I just want to do something a little bit more complex and just like practice drawing backgrounds for my drawings. And I also wanted to draw more masculine people because I rarely draw any men or masculine people. I always draw feminine presenting people. And so I have been practicing that on my own a bit. Here's a little page I did, drew a couple of masculine people, and it was a lot of fun. I liked getting in all the details and stuff. And here's an example of some poses. This was actually my first attempt in a long time, and I just took what I remembered from art school about like gesture drawing and like drawing like the shapes of kind of the pose first and then worrying about the details later. And so the proportions aren't great, it's a little too short. So then I tried it again and it turned out a little bit better. And then these are obviously, I had to spend a lot more time on these ones. And I really like the color combinations too. And so today I'm going to try to do one of those, at least one of those things, maybe draw some poses, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. I just felt like using watercolors today because I haven't in a super long time. I haven't really been painting that much this year so far. So yeah, let's do some bits of warm-up first, and then we'll see what flows within me. I wonder if you are trying to guess what I'm even painting. And don't worry if you have no idea or that it doesn't look like anything that is familiar to you. It's because it's not exactly supposed to look like anything's... Well, it's supposed to look like something specific. It's not supposed to look exactly like what I was trying to paint. I was sort of doing a little quick study of this like aquarium photo that I found of some like pink moon jellyfish. I think they're moon jellyfish. And there were some really tiny fish, but I didn't really go into the details on those little guys until much later. And I was just, like I mentioned, I was just trying to do some kind of warm up, and I've been really into like painting and drawing fish lately ever since this little page that I did.
and I've been having a blast. I think the colors are just really fun. All the blues and the greens are just a beautiful color combination, and the little fishies that are in there, and whatever kind of coral or anemone kind of stuff. Anemone? So yeah, if you've been trying to figure out what this is, maybe you thought it might have been a landscape or something, that would be a good guess, but it's just a little aquarium piece of, some jellyfish and a little coral reef, I think. I don't know. I was just having fun using, sort of the colors that I thought matched the photo, but not really worrying about the details very much, and that's what really helped me continue the rest of this spread that I will do. This section is just a little practice to help me get started and, fill at least a portion of these blank pages. And it definitely did help when I wanted to complete the rest of the spread, I used a lot of the same colors that I did in this little aquarium photo, and that really helped incorporate the whole piece. And then it kind of got a bit interesting where I was just putting anything on the page, and I wasn't expecting to draw a bunch of portraits here, but I did a couple more studies of some portrait photography, just any photos that I thought looked interesting, specifically with like certain facial expressions or facial profiles, just to practice drawing those a bit, because I like to dip back into trying side profiles and stuff like that, because I definitely started drawing only frontal portraits, just like head on, and always like headless drawings or bustless drawings. So I tried to incorporate that a bit in the trilogy of portraits that I end up doing, and it was fun. I also just realized that this is like one of the first pages in a really long time of between both of my sketchbooks that the background is pretty much completely white. There's just a lot of white space. Even towards the end of the drawing, there's still some white space. Like I was having a hard time looking at these pages for a while, which is probably what sort of maybe can make this page a bit chaotic with like just the oddness of what I'm used to, which is either doing some kind of underpainting or just covering the page first before I start anything in some kind of color, and I haven't done that in a long time. What I really liked about the little aquarium piece is that there was color laid out already, and then I did splotches of color on top, which is why it looks muddy and messy, because I didn't let it dry. And I'm also putting light color on top of a darker color in some points, and that's kind of hard to do with watercolor if you're not using white. So even when you do use white, it's not acrylic. You can't just paint a light color on top of a dark color as easy as acrylic with watercolor, at least in my opinion. With my skill set in watercolor, I've seen some really amazing things being done with watercolor, and I did some of this a little bit backwards, so it's probably why that happened. I tried to fill in a lot of the gaps after I finished this portrait with some kind of color stuff. I don't know, it just, when I finished this page, I wanted to draw more, and I was like, I've spent like an hour on this weird spread of fish and people, and I don't know, I just was like, this ended up kind of being chaotic, and it's probably because I've been a bit stressed lately, and that kind of conveyed through these pages. You probably don't see stress when you look at it, but with the accumulation of just stuff and color, and not in like a really well thought out kind of way, kind of makes me feel stressed when I look at these pages. But at least I felt a bit better when I was done. I spent a long time on these pages, and I was expecting to draw more, but I was like, I think we're good for today. And I also needed to let this dry for a long time, and that's one of the things with me in watercolor. I get impatient with waiting for it to dry. Acrylic dries like that, which is why some people don't like it, because it dries too fast. With watercolor, I cannot wait. I want to keep going, and I want to keep painting, but I can't, because then it'll turn into a wet mess that's not gonna look good, and then the paper is too wet and you can't really work with it very well. So I don't know, I always go back and forth of, oh, watercolor is so fun and relaxing, and then watercolor is boring, takes too long, hate it. It gets weird. And this is where I kind of felt that the pages started to get chaotic, because I just turned the people into an aquarium. I put reef stuff and kelp and seaweed all around them, and fish. These were actually the fish that were in the tank or something with the moon jellyfish. I don't know if you can see, I did little yellow blobs underneath the pink blobs, and then I was like, you can't really see them, let's just put them on the page because it's really empty here. And then I kept adding those fish. I put all the moon jellyfish all around the paper, and then I realized it needed more color because I didn't like how blank it was, so I started adding water in here too. And I don't know, I just wanted to fill as much as I could so I can let it dry, and I wanted to do some details with markers, and I couldn't do that while this was all wet. So when I finished the little water parts that I wanted to do around all this, around in between the portraits and the fish, I finally let it dry and brought out the markers. So I did a couple of details with the markers and was finally able to do little eyes for the fish because I didn't want it to get really messy with some black paint, and too wet of a paint, it'll just get everywhere. So I filled in some of the other blank space with some fish washi tape that I have. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was like, I have fish stickers. Let me just put this here on this fish page that I drew. Great thinking. And then I used a super dried out blue alcohol marker to just like do some cross hatching sort of, or just sort of a just messy sketching to just fill in the rest of the page with some quote blue water. And then I was like, yeah, that looks good. Some of the reasons why I think that this ended up being chaotic, not only because there's just so many random things everywhere, is that I just had no expectations for this. I knew that I wanted to do a little aquarium study, but then I didn't really have any ideas of what to do after that. And I had some portrait references that I had saved for another time, or for inspiration for another time. And I was like, what if I just drew a couple of portraits in here too? And then other stuff happened. Fish and kelp happened. Is it kelp or seaweed? Am I mixing SpongeBob with real life? Aren't we all? Anyway, I completed it with some stars, because what's an artist drawing without stars? Nothing. So I drew some big stars with a blue marker to tie in the colors, and then I have these sticker sheets of just like hundreds of stars, and I was just putting a bunch of the gold yellowy ones all over the place for a little bit of sparkle and fun. And stickers make all of us happy, don't they? I love stickers. They are just really calming to use. But then there's other times where you just hoard them and you don't know what to do with them. Stickers are kind of like watercolor. Then I didn't like how dull this one portrait looked, because the paint kind of disappeared a little bit, so I just finished it off with a black marker, and then I almost did that for the rest of the portraits, but I liked the colors that they were, and I liked how they looked, so I just left those alone. And this is the final spread. On a scale of 1 to 10, how chaotic do you think this is? For me, it feels like a good 7 or 8. But I really hope you enjoyed me drawing, and if you drew along with me, let me know. And I will see you guys next time. Make sure to like and subscribe. Goodbye!